What's up, YouTube? I am the Vanilla Nerd, and today I want to review The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, this won't be a super in-depth review. I'm not going to go episode by episode or even character by character, but I do want to just get some of my general thoughts and feelings about the show out of the way. With that in mind, there will be spoilers for the entire show, as well as the movies leading up to it. You know, the 3 Captain America movies and the last 2 Avengers movies would be good spoiler warnings, minor spoilers for all of those films, as well as some minor spoilers potentially for Thunderbolts and Captain America: Brave New World, both of which have come out after this show, but showcase heroes that were shown in this show. So it's kind of interesting to see how the characters have grown and stuff, and it'll be kind of cool to look back at that. So spoiler warning for all of those things. Let's get into the review. Okay, so when it comes to The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I really feel like this falls into a lot of movies, a lot of reviews where I say it's good, not great. Overall, I liked it. There's more things I liked about it than I didn't, but I think there's a lot of things I didn't like about it, and that's kind of frustrating. Especially on this last rewatch, I really feel like this show was originally meant to be a movie. And I feel like since this was one of the first projects that came out on Disney Plus, it's very obvious to me that they were looking for things to put on Disney Plus, and they just said, oh yeah, this movie, let's just turn it into a show. And hence a lot of this feels very dragged out. There's a lot of filler, and there's a lot of redundant scenes where it's like, these 2 scenes could have been combined, and you wouldn't have needed to do this. Anyway, it's beside the point. Unfortunately, it is a TV show, and so here's what we get. I do think that if it was a movie, it would have been received a lot better. Maybe it still not would have been great, but it would have been received a lot better. That's my personal opinion. Okay, so for the rest of this review, I really want to handle it in a sort of good, bad, and ugly format and just talk about each of those aspects. So starting with the good of this show, I really liked that Sam and Bucky had to learn how to become friends. It kind of is easy to forget that they aren't, because the actors, Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie, are such good friends in real life. But in all honesty, their characters haven't shared that much screen time together and haven't had a lot of time to actually form those bonds. Like, they didn't really talk at all in Captain America 2 and Captain America 3. They talked a little bit together, but not much. It was only a few hours before, before Falcon got captured and Bucky ran off with Captain America. And then they were both blipped before they really had a chance to hit things off. So reminding us of that and taking us on a story where they become friends and they learn to trust each other was really exciting. And I really liked that for these 2 characters. Another thing I really liked about this show was the premise. I really liked the idea of Sam struggling to take on the mantle of Captain America, that he's not ready for it right away. I think that's powerful, and I think they tell a really good story there. I also really like how this serves as a natural way to introduce John Walker. He's the replacement Captain America that none of us like. That's great, and I'm going to have more thoughts about John Walker here in a second. But I just love that premise of who's going to take up the mantle of Captain America. Is it going to be Sam, who's the right guy to do it, or is it going to be John Walker, who's kind of a loose cannon, not the best guy for the job and stuff? And I think that works really, really well, especially since I feel like in the comics, John Walker functions more as U.S. agent than he ever does as Captain America, which is fine, but I really like how he kind of comes on and is introduced first as Captain America and then slowly becomes U.S. agent. Thought that was really cool for this show. But going back to Sam Wilson, I really like that his struggle with becoming Captain America is because he is a black man, and it's hard for him to support America, which notoriously had a very bad history with black Americans and stuff and racism. So I really liked that struggle for Sam and seeing him overcome that and seeing him choose to not let racism stop him from being the best person he can be and from being a superhero, a symbol for hope for the future and stuff. So I really liked that. I do recognize and acknowledge that a lot of the scenes surrounding the racism were very heavy-handed and not subtle. But that's okay. I don't know. that was not what bothered me the most about the show. I do wish it was a bit more subtle. I do wish it handled with a bit more finesse, but you win some, you lose some. And I think this show was still good in spite of the heavy-handed nature of the messaging. At least that messaging specifically surrounding racism. And to that end, I really liked the character of Isaiah Bradley. I really liked how he was introduced. I really liked his tragic story of being a super soldier, but also being a guinea pig for American scientists and stuff. I like to think that part of that was Hydra, but it's not really ever specifically explained. But I do like his character. I liked Isaiah Bradley, and I liked what he contributed to the story, and I thought that was good. Jumping over to the Winter Soldier, I really liked Bucky's story for the most part. There were a few things. What I enjoyed about it was I liked how he's dealing with the trauma of being the Winter Soldier. We get to see things from his perspective. We get to see him reliving some of those horrible memories, and that was really powerful. And the fact that he kind of atones for those mistakes and tells this nice Japanese man what happened to his son and stuff. And so I really liked that for Bucky. As well as the fact that Bucky was really hurt by Falcon not taking the shield and not becoming Captain America. I thought that made a lot of sense for his character. I like how Sam, in a lot of ways, is his last connection to Steve and to something that he knows in this world, which, again, makes a lot of sense. He's a man out of time just as much as Captain America, but instead of being lauded and appreciated by everyone, he's kind of met with derision and worries. People worry about him and stuff, because he is an assassin and stuff. So I get it. And I liked his character, and I liked his character moments. The one thing I kind of didn't like is that, he has this big moment. He tells this Japanese man what happened to his son, and then we don't see the fallout. We don't see him actually take on the consequence beyond the fact that we see him looking at the man through a window, and lose that friendship. So I guess that's the consequence. He lost that friendship, which is sad and tragic, but still kind of not as powerful as I think it could have been. Small critique, but nonetheless, it's there. And lastly, I really think the characterization of John Walker was done really, really well. The show set a foundation for that character, just a really strong foundation. He's headstrong. He puts on a face for a lot of people, but there's an underlying anger and frustration he has there. He is a competent military guy, but he's also quick to make bad decisions and stuff. And on top of all that, I like that he takes the serum. I like that he becomes U.S. agent, and I like that he is still a bad Captain America. I like his character, but I think he's bad at being Captain America, and that's okay. Different heroes can hero differently. That's fine. And also, to the redemption of his character, I really appreciated that he gave up on his revenge of chasing down Carly Morgenthau and went to save the truck. That was a really good scene. And again, it just sets him up to be a sympathetic hero in the future. And that works really well. Okay, so that was everything that I thought was good about the show. What did I think was bad? Well, getting some of the smaller stuff out of the way, Sam's sister was bleh. I really couldn't care less about the plotline of Sam's sister and their boat that they have to save. It didn't really make that much of an impact. It didn't really matter. I didn't really care. I did enjoy the little montage of them fixing up the boat. That was a fun scene, but beyond that, it didn't really matter. Another one that was kind of bleh was Sharon being the power broker. This was a really boring mystery. They tried to make it this super interesting, like, who's the power broker? Who could it be? But it was just like, I don't even care who the power broker is. It doesn't even matter. But on top of that, turning Sharon into a villain was a really dumb idea. I don't know who watched Captain America 2 and 3 and said, yes, this excellent character, Sharon Carter, let's make her evil. Let's make her a villain. Now, to the credit, and maybe giving too much credit to the writers, maybe, and I swear just maybe, they intended her to be a Skrull and they were setting that up for Secret Invasion, but they didn't confirm it in the show for whatever reason. And then the show Secret Invasion just never capitalized on that, which that show had numerous problems. # Marvel ruined Skrulls, but that's beside the point. The point is, I think maybe they were thinking that she was going to be a Skrull, but that's giving them a lot of credit. And even if that's true, I'm still frustrated they didn't confirm it. And so at the end of the day, we're left with a Sharon that is just canonically evil in this universe. And I really don't like that. That's very distasteful to me, and that really frustrates me. Another thing I didn't like about this show was that they tried to vilify the super soldier serum. They tried to make it sound like it was this evil thing that no good person would willingly choose to take it, which just really baffles me because, like, back in the first Avengers, Steve wanted to take the serum, and we all saw that was a good decision. And you can argue that, oh, well, this show recontextualizes that as Steve was young and didn't know any better, and that was war, and who knows? But I still think that's not the way I want to recontextualize that. No, Steve was good. Super Soldier Serum is fine. Wanting to take it and believing you're worthy of taking it is fine. Like, I get that the serum still enhances everything about you. Good becomes better. It becomes great. Bad becomes worse. I'm fine with that, but doesn't mean someone's evil for believing that they would become better with the serum. Like, it just really bothers me. And the show even goes back on this, or not the show. The MCU even goes back on this because in this show, Falcon, without hesitation, says, no, I would never consider taking the serum. But then in Brave New World, he's suddenly like, I should have taken that serum. I should have taken that serum, which he never had an opportunity to take the serum in the show in the first place. It just, it boggles my mind. And personally, if you want to know where I stand, I think Falcon absolutely should have taken the serum. I think he should have been super strong and had wings. That would have been totally okay. It's not overpowered. It would have been fine, but instead, this is what we got. So, yeah. To this end, though, I will say I did like the serum being used to show off Zemo's motivations and beliefs. I liked how Zemo said, like, superheroes are inherently bad because none of them are mistake-free. They all make mistakes, and so therefore we are putting these people up on pedestals when really they're not great people and stuff. And Bucky counteracts with, well, Steve Rogers was good, and he never cracked, he never broke. And Zemo even admits, touche. Steve Rogers never did break, but there's never been another Steve Rogers. And I really liked that little back and forth because it shows that Zemo, at least this version of him, is a little more understanding of the nuances. He's willing to admit when he's wrong, and he's willing to admit that Captain America was a good superhero, but that most superheroes aren't. And I like that. I liked that little bit of dialogue, and I liked that little explanation into Zemo's belief systems, even though this was all in support of vilifying the serum. Serum is evil. Nah, that's just goofy. And the last big thing that I want to talk about that I think this show does poorly and that I really didn't like was how much political and international influence they gave the shield of Captain America. Suddenly, everyone and their dog had an opinion about this shield. Some people loved it, some people hated it, some people thought it was a representation of everything wrong with America, and it just feels like it came so far out of left field because in all the previous movies of Captain America, nowhere did they focus on him being a representative of America. Like, it's telling that in Captain America 3, during the Sokovia Accords conversations, no one brings up the fact that the U.S. probably signed the Sokovia Accords and that Captain America is going against America. Like, that never gets brought up and stuff. Always the focus of his movies was on him being an innately good person and constantly choosing to do good no matter what it cost him. And that's a great story, and those are great characters, and I think that was the right choice. But this show suddenly decided to not go in that direction, and they make the shield all about its connection to America and stuff. And I really, really don't like that. Now, I'm not saying that the shield has never had significance in the past, but most of the time that was always very personal to Steve Rogers. Famously at the end of Captain America 2, he drops his shield and says he's not going to fight Bucky. And at the end of Captain America 3, he drops his shield again because Iron Man points out the very real, cruel irony that he used the shield to defend the killer of the man who made the shield. And Cap says, I'm not going to, essentially it says in not in words, that I'm not going to fight you on this. Take the shield. It's not what's important to me. What's most important to me is doing the right thing and protecting my friends. And so he protects his friend Bucky, and I love that and stuff. So the shield's had significance in the past. It's just never had the political international weight that it has in this show. Like, for crying out loud, Carly, a United Kingdom citizen, by accent at least, has an opinion on the shield. And as far as I know, Captain America has never set foot in Britain. I mean, maybe he has, but not on screen in a big way or anything. Ugh. Okay, so moving on to the ugly. These are the things that aren't quite bad, but aren't quite good. They're just ugly, right? The terrorists were supposed to be sympathetic. This was handled very poorly. I could kind of understand it from a little bit of a perspective, but they were constantly shown to do evil things. You know, Carly kills a group full of innocents because she says this is the only language these people understand. And so it's like, yeah, you've definitely gone over the deep end, but then they try and like reel it back and say, oh, she's just misguided and she's misunderstood and stuff, and it just it frustrates me. They also did the dumb trope of like Sam comes to talk to her peacefully and then they get interrupted before they can find a resolution by a third party, and then, you know, Carly is like, you set this up just so that John Walker could ambush me. And it's like dumb because clearly Sam doesn't like the new Captain America, and it's just anyway, the trope was dumb. Them trying to make the terrorists sympathetic was handled very poorly, and it just comes out very messy. And speaking about the terrorists, I really like the overall conflict for this show. I feel like the idea of dealing with the aftermath of the blip is really interesting and exciting. And the problems they bring up of relocating people into new homes, away from the home that they've maybe owned before and stuff, dealing with them getting their jobs back or finding new jobs is a really interesting challenge. But I also don't think it holds a whole lot of water, because with the influx of people, you would need an influx of jobs and stuff. And it just wouldn't be as big of a problem as I think they make it out to be on this global level and stuff. And so that's why I think it was poorly handled. But more so than it not being as big of a problem as they make it out to be is the fact that they don't really have a solution for it. It's like the showrunners and the writers didn't know how they wanted to solve this, so they just had Sam famously end with a speech saying, you can do better, you need to do better, but not actually giving a solution. I do think Sam's speech at the end is better than some people give it credit for, but I do think it is still ultimately kind of weak and falls a little flat because he doesn't give a solution. And I think the writers themselves didn't have a solution to this problem, which is funny. So that's why it's ugly. It was a good idea exploring the ramifications of the blip, but poor execution. And ultimately it just kind of fell flat. The last thing that's kind of ugly about this show is how comically evil John Walker is shown to be. They juxtapose his actions next to Sam Wilson every single chance they get. It's like at no point is Sam able to make an action that isn't immediately contrasted by John Walker, or vice versa. And it just is so funny to me. They still make John Walker into a good character. Sam is still the right Captain America. It's all good, but it's just, once you notice that, it makes the show seem very predictable and very lazy in its writing. I feel like there should have been more common ground between the characters and less just this night and day divide between the two of them. So that was handled in a pretty ugly way. So in conclusion, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is good, not great. I've been saying that over and over again, but it deserves saying once again. It's a messy show that I think very clearly was supposed to be a movie that was dragged out, which is unfortunate. And on top of everything else, I really wanted to like this show. I love the characters of Falcon and Winter Soldier, but unfortunately, they just didn't make up for the boringness of the rest of the movie. I think those characters were handled pretty well. and so was John Walker, but the rest of the characters and the rest of the plot was handled very poorly and not so well. And that's really unfortunate and stuff. And probably the biggest thing I can say against this film, this TV show, is that I really don't have a strong desire to rewatch it. And when I do rewatch it, I only watch parts of certain episodes. I don't watch the whole episode all the way through. So yeah, that's the biggest problem. Meanwhile, I can't tell you the number of times I've seen Captain America 2 because I've rewatched it so many times because that's how good of a show it is. So, yeah. In the end, The Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to go down as a mediocre TV show that is good for some backstory into who some of the characters are, but not great. And that's it.